साथ साथ चाय भी पीऊंगा, but let's start, okay? So hey everybody, we're live and in stereo. So welcome after we are done with our chemistry syllabus. Now we will be starting off with our first yearly, that is gonna be O levels 22 May June 2021, 1 hour 30 minutes paper, right? So let's first write the candidate name. My name is obviously Salman Khan. Tomorrow we're gonna use somebody else's name. Yeah, so Muhammad Salman Khan, and I'll use Hamza's name tomorrow, and then we'll shift to Abira and then Qasim and then whatnot, right? So let's start with our paper without further ado. So it says choose from the following. So you guys have to be with me, right? And it says answer all the questions in the spaces provided. So we're gonna answer all the questions and we're gonna get 75 out of 75 marks, right? So choose from the following compounds to answer the question. So we're given some compounds and it says answer the question. Now it says part A, ये तो मुफ्त के marks होते हैं. Literally it goes like state which compound has a molecule with only 11 atoms. Now that's pretty simple, and this says कि each compound may be used once or more than once or not at all. Okay, so has a molecule with only 11 atoms. Let's check which molecule has 11 atoms. Just count the number of atoms. 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8. This doesn't. 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 10 11 12. This doesn't. 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 10 11. And absolutely C is our answer. Why? Because C has 11 atoms. ये तो हलवा सवाल है, right? So we say कि C is the answer because it has 11 atoms in it. Now part 2 says is oxidized to form ethanoic acid. Now what should be oxidized to form ethanoic acid? Obviously ethanol should be oxidized to form ethanoic acid. So let's check which one is ethanol with us, and right here the first compound meth, eth, and it has an OH, so that is ethanol absolutely. Therefore A is gonna be that compound, right? Then part 3 says is an isomer of butene. So butene ka formula kya tha? C4H8, right? Butene, it's an alkene, so alkene has a formula CnH2n. So since it's bute means 4, C4H8. Just count the number of carbons and hydrogens, and whichever has the same number of carbons and hydrogens will be the isomer. So if you check A to alcohol hai, and then it has the O's, and butene only has carbons and hydrogens. So check the compound with only carbons and hydrogens, and it should have 4 carbons and 4 hydrogens, right? 8 hydrogens. So if we look at B says 1 2 3 4 4 carbons, 2 4 6 8, and yes sir, B is our butene, right? So we can say is an isomer of butene. So B is our isomer of butene, although it's not a butene because it does not have a double bond, but it's an isomer. Why? Because isomer हमने पढ़ा है कि it should have the same molecular formula but different structural formula, and absolutely this has a different structure compared to butene, but the molecular formula is same. Now moving on, it says reacts with hydrogen in the presence of a catalyst to make alkane. So what is this? You realize that alkenes reacts with hydrogen in the presence of a catalyst, and what was that catalyst? Nickel solid in a temperature of 100 to 200 degrees Celsius, and obviously an alkane is formed. Now check which compound is an alkene with you guys. So can you guys check which is an alkene with you? Check it out. Which one is an alkene? Check it out. Come on. Yeah, D right here. That's an alkene because it has a double bond, right? So this is absolutely an alkene, carbon-carbon double bond. So D is our molecule right here. Then it says contains 4 different elements chemically combined, everybody. So 4 different elements should be there. Now in A you only have 3 different elements. One is carbon, one is oxygen, one is hydrogen. Only 3. Here you only have 2, carbon and hydrogen. Here you have 1 2 3 again. Here again 2, here 2, then here you have 3 again, and then here you have, like in G you also have like 3 different elements. But in H, if you see, you have 4 different elements. One is nitrogen, one is carbon, one is hydrogen, and one is oxygen. So these are your 4 different elements. That's why H is my answer. See, muft ke 5-6 marks, this is like halwa. That's why I hate O levels. Itna aasan sawal. Now, identify 2 compounds that had a pH of less than 7 in aqueous solution. Now, less than 7 pH kiska hota hai? Obviously acidic. So acidic substances or acids, they have a pH of less than 7. So check which ones are acid. This is an alcohol. That's maybe an cyclic alkane. That's in this one you have like C double bond OOH, and you realize कि C double bond OOH किसका functional group था? That was the functional group of Now is the functional group of carboxylic acid, right? So this is basically which acid? Meth, eth, prop. That's propanoic acid, and since it's an acid, it'll have a pH less than 7, right? So C to आपके पास answer है. But if you look around, you also have another acid. Do you have another acid right here? Yes, you do. Do you have another functional group? Right here, C double bond OOH, right? So F is also containing the carboxylic acid functional group, and therefore this will also have a pH less than 7, everybody. So you have C and F for this, right? C and F. बाकी सारे नहीं है, बाकी में किसी में भी नहीं. If you guys by mistake said कि this is the carboxylic acid group, no, that's the ester linkage. This is an ester, and which ester is this? Here you can check which ester this is. So जो carbonyl carbon होता है, carbon double bond carbon, उसके साथ जितने carbons लगे, that's from the acid part. So that's meth, eth, prop, that's propanoate, right? And you realize कि जो O के साथ होता है, that's your alcohol bit. So this is meth, eth, prop. So this is propyl propanoate. So that's it. Any questions in question number 1? Question number 1 के हमें 6 के 6 marks मिल गए, right? 6 के 6, beautiful. Any questions? Abira Qasim, quickly guys. Moving on then. Oxygen, sulfur, and selenium, tellurium, and polonium are in group 6. State the percentage composition by volume of oxygen in dry air. What is the composition of oxygen in dry air? What is the percentage? 21%. We did this, yes, we did that yesterday. 78% nitrogen, 28% oxygen, and 21% oxygen, and 1% carbon dioxide and other noble gases. Now, state one large scale use of for oxygens. So we did that. The oxygens किस में use होते हैं? We said कि oxygen is used in like oxygen tanks. It's also used in like your welding में इस्तेमाल होता है. हमने ये सारा कल किया था, right? Welding में इस्तेमाल होता है, and it's also used in the manufacture of steel. So many other uses, right? So you can write either or. These are the 3 which I taught you guys. Now explain why both isotopes have the same chemical properties. Again, isotopes are atoms of the same element having the same number of protons but different number of neutrons, right? But if the protons are same, obviously the electrons are same, and you realize that chemical properties, they depend on the number of electrons, right? So if the number of electrons are the same, you realize that the chemical properties will be the same, and physical properties, they depend on the number of protons, right? So I've told you guys बिल्कुल शुरू में ये बात है when we were doing atomic structure. मैंने कहा था आपको कि physical properties will depend on the number of protons. If they are the same, the physical properties will be same. But if you realize that if the electron number is same, obviously the chemical properties will be same. So you say why do both isotopes have same chemical properties? Because they both have the same number of electrons. And in other words, if you want to write this beautifully, number of electrons, you can literally say it has the same electronic configuration, which literally means it has the same number of electrons, right? So a same electronic configuration or the same number of electrons will determine the chemical properties, and if they are same, the number or the chemical properties will be the same. Now it says give one difference in the atomic structure of these two isotopes. So what is the difference? Obviously the neutron number. And if you check the neutron number, this have, how many neutrons does this have? So 209 minus 84, that's giving you 125. And इसमें कितने neutrons है? PO polonium 210 minus 84, that is 126. So you realize you can tell the examiner that the difference between these two is that polonium 20984 has one fewer neutron than polonium 84210. Right? So you could tell, you could say it like that, or you could have said that polonium 210 has one more neutron than polonium 29. It's the same thing, 209 and 210, right? Now, moving on, selenium forms a compound that contains only selenium, oxygen, and chlorine by mass, right? And since the compound contains 9.6% oxygen and it contains how much of chlorine? It contains 42.8% chlorine. So how much should be selenium? You know, okay, a total percentage is 100, so 100 minus 9.6 minus 42.8, so selenium इसमें कितना होगा? 47.6%. Then the next part is they've asked you for the empirical formula, obviously, so divide by the molar mass is 1635.5. What is the molar mass of selenium, everybody? Can you check that out? Let me check it out. नीचे दिया होगा periodic table में. It's given right here. So the molar mass of selenium is right here. That's 79. Right. So let's go up and let's write 79. So moving up, let's write 79 right here. So 79 is selenium. So the first step was divide by the molar masses. What do you get? So 47.6 divided by 79, roughly 0.6 ratio. 9.6 divided by 16, that's also giving you like 0.6. And then 42.8 divided by 35.5, that's giving you 1.2 something, right? So 1.2. Now it says empirical formula for the next step for the empirical formula is divide by the smallest ratio. So 0.6 is सबको divide करें and voila, 1:2, and that's gonna give you guys the empirical formula, which is selenium, oxygen, and 2 chlorine. So SeOCl2. Beautiful. Muft ke 3 marks. Like, how easy is this stuff? Moving on, it says a sample of oxygen has a volume of 11.5 decimeter cube at room temperature and pressure. The temperature of the sample is decreased. The pressure remains constant. Describe and explain using the kinetic particle theory what happens to the volume of the sample. So what will happen when the temperature of the sample decreases? We've done this. So if the temperature decreases, the particles will lose kinetic energy and therefore the particles will move, because it's asking in terms of particles. So the particles will move slower and closer together, and because they're moving slower and they're coming closer together, the volume is absolutely, hence the volume is absolutely what? Decreasing. Right? So beautiful stuff. Then it says the pressure of the sample is decreased and the temperature is constant. Now they're actually messing up the pressure, right? It says, okay, describe what will happen to the volume again. So now if you decrease, so if the pressure decreases, you realize that the gas particles, they will move further apart. No, you're decreasing the pressure. Pressure जब आप increase करते हो तो they will move closer together. So if you're decreasing the pressure, the gas particles will move further apart, guys. So the gas particles move further apart, and therefore what is happening to the volume? So, and the volume increases. So just be careful. Don't just jump to conclusions. Be very, very careful in these things. Now, calculate the mass of oxygen in 11.5 decimeter cube of sample. So 11.5 decimeter cube of oxygen है आपके पास. You don't need decimeter cube of oxygen, so it needs to be cancelled out. And you realize that the only way you could do that is by using the mole of oxygen and decimeter cube का relationship. And that is, okay, 1 mole of oxygen will have 24 decimeter cube of oxygen. But now you don't need moles of oxygen, so that'll also need to be cancelled out. But you need what? Grams of oxygen. Mass चाहिए. And you know okay, moles of oxygen and grams of oxygen has a relationship. And that is, okay, 1 mole of oxygen actually has 32 grams of oxygen. So the units will cancel out, and therefore 11.5 times 32 divided by 24. So that'll give you 11.5 times 32 divided by 24. That's giving me 15.3333 and so on and so forth. Now the question says give your answer in 2 significant figures. Now इसमें 1 mark सिर्फ इसके लिए था. This question is for 2 marks. So 1 mark is for the answer and the second mark is for the significant figures, right? It's for the accuracy. So 2 significant figures क्या हैं? 1 and that's 2 significant. So अगर 3 कहता तो 15.3, 4 कहता 15.33. So 15 is gonna be your significant figures. Okay, for example, this answer would have been like, what if this answer would have been like 15.999? Up 2 significance figure kya hota? This 9 would have rounded off, to up 16 hota. Okay, so just be careful with significant figures. Now, moving on, question 3. It says there is a concern about the disposal of plastics made from non-biodegradable polymers. The partial structure of non-biodegradable polymer is shown. Name the type of polymer. Now, which type of a polymer is this, guys? Recognize this. See, it's even telling you it's non-biodegradable, and even from the structure you can recognize. No, man, it's an addition polymer. What are you doing? एडिशन में कोई सिंथेटिक वगैरह नहीं होता है, एडिशन सारे ही ऐसे होते हैं. यू स्टडीड कंडेंसेशन पॉलीमर्स, एंड इन कंडेंसेशन पॉलीमर्स वी स्टडीड कि देयर आर टू फर्दर टाइप्स इन कंडेंसेशन पॉलीमर्स, वन इज नेचुरल एंड वन इज सिंथेटिक. एडिशन तो सारे एडिशन ही है सिर्फ. You could do at no, like there's nothing naturally occurring, okay, so you're actually making them. So addition polymer, right? This, and then it's also telling you, see, even a hint, big fat hint is given, it's a non-biodegradable. You studied ke addition polymers are non-biodegradable. Yeah, so it says ke draw the structure of the monomer used to make this polymer. How do you get to the monomers? Cut after 2 carbons, cut after 2 carbons, cut after 2 carbons. Just make this or this because both are the same thing. So you make C bonded to C, bonded to, and you make a double bond between them, bonded to the H, bonded to the Cl, bonded to the CH3, and bonded to the H. So that's the monomer, everybody, right? Moving on, it says the polymer is often disposed of by combustion. Suggest one problem. Now realize कि when the examiner is asking suggest का मतलब है कि you haven't studied this type of a question in like real life. It's not a part of your course, but the course content that you've actually studied, you will be able to answer this if your concepts are clear. So suggest one problem with the method of, with this method of disposal. And which method is it talking about? It's saying that this polymer is often disposed of by combustion. So it's saying that you burn this polymer, and you realize that what did we study? That when you burn addition polymers, or if you burn plastic, what is actually going to happen? What is the one problem? Toxic gases are released, right? So toxic gases, or you can also say कि toxic की जगह आप ये भी कह सकते हैं कि poisonous, right? So you can either say toxic, or you could say कि poisonous gases are released, which is a big fat problem because it will cause a pollution, everybody, right? So either poisonous gases are released or poisonous fumes are released, either or would be correct. Now lactic acid is used to make polylactic acid, a biodegradable polymer, right? So it's talking about a condensation polymer. The structure of lactic acid is shown. Suggest what? So suggest, again, suggest आपने पढ़ा नहीं होगा, लेकिन देखिए मैंने आपको ये सारी चीजें पढ़ाई हैं. See, I told you that this is not a part of your course, but it can come, right? So suggest what is meant by the term biodegradable. Again, I told you guys what biodegradable was. What was biodegradable? Anything that can be broken down or decomposed, anything that can be decomposed with the action of bacteria. Okay, anything that bacteria can decompose is called biodegradable, right? And you can also say, in the other words, कि if O levels को इतनी thorough definition नहीं चाहिए, O level में you can also just get away by saying कि anything that can naturally be decomposed. So anything that can naturally be decomposed. But that's not the proper definition. For the proper definition is this, कि anything that can be decomposed with the action of bacteria. और bacteria naturally occur करती है, right? Act करती है. So anything that can either be naturally decomposed or anything that can be decomposed by the action of bacteria is called biodegradable. Moving on, it says draw the partial structure of polylactic acid. Now it's given you guys the monomer right here. That's the polylactic acid. So it's, let me just show you what they've drawn. So एक जगह पे hydroxide है, एक जगह पे carboxylic acid है, और CH3 और H है. So they've drawn CCH3, that's H, that's OH, and that's C double bond OOH. So it's saying कि draw at least 2 repeat units, तो 2 दफ़ा इसको बनाए, H, CH3, OH, and then C, and let me just shift this molecule right here. So OH, and then C double bond OH. So you've drawn these two. Now remember, how are we how are we making condensation polymers? Carboxylic acid से OH निकलेगा और alcohol से H निकलेगा. That's gone. So alcohol से H निकला, carboxylic acid से OH निकला. Similarly right here, alcohol से H निकलेगा, carboxylic acid से OH निकलेगा. So that's also gone. So what is actually left? You can just join these two and now they'll bond between them, right? So this is actually an ester linkage that will be formed. That's your continuity bond, that's your continuity bond, and you join it. So that's how you do it simply, right? So 2 marks muft ke iske bhi mil gaye. Now a factory uses 500 tons of lactic acid, and guys, stop me wherever you guys are not getting it, okay? But we've done all of this stuff, so you guys should be feeling very, very easy while doing this. Now the percentage of yield, it says a factory uses 500 tons of lactic acid to make polylactic acid, so it's using these monomers to make this polymer, right? And since the percentage yield is 100%, although this is not practically possible, but they want to test one concept right here, and let me tell you what that concept is. The percentage yield is 100%, but the mass of the polylactic acid made is less than 500 tons. Now saying, why is this happening? Why is this happening? Remember, we studied this condensation polymers may the mass of the monomers, the mass of the sum of the monomers will not be equal to the mass of the polymer. And why? Because it's a, so you say since it's a condensation polymer, what is going to happen? Why is the mass not the same even though that the yield is same? Since it's a condensation polymer, a small water molecule is eliminated. And if that water molecule is eliminated, uska mass is not going to be the part of the polymer's mass. That's why you realize, okay, that is the reason why the masses of the polymer and the monomers is not the same. Where? You guys should be solving mini. Where, Hamza? Hamza, I literally did what? I drew, yeah. Yeah? Where? What are you talking about? See, Hamza, what did I do? I just drew this. Listen to me. I just drew this, and it says कि दो repeat unit बनाए. So I just copied this once again. ये मैंने हूबहू एक दफा फिर लगाया. Yes. Yeah. Here C bonded to the O bonded to the C. Now getting it? Okay. Moving on. It's an ester linkage, obviously. That's the ester linkage. If you want to show it, that's the ester linkage. Yeah. That's why it's even saying polylactic acid, right? So yeah. Aqueous lactic acid reacts with acidified potassium manganate. There is a color change from purple to colorless. Now it's an acid and it's reacting with acidified potassium permanganate, and there is a change from purple to colorless. It suggests what happens to the lactic acid in this reaction. Now what is happening? Potassium permanganate purple to colorless hua. Kya matlab? Kya ho gaya? If potassium permanganate is going from purple to colorless, what reaction is taking place? Oxidation. So oxidation is taking place. And why is it taking place? You can say, oh, ये तो सर lactic acid है. Acid की तो oxidation हमने नहीं देखी, but you realize कि although it's lactic acid, it has the hydroxide part right here. It has the OH bit in it. Sorry, the hydroxyl part, right? So it has the OH bit in it. And if it has the OH bit in it, if you add potassium permanganate to it, you realize that this OH will actually be oxidized. So either say H or ये निकल गया. You know how to oxidize it. Take these two, make the double bond, and add an OH, right? So you realize that that's how the oxidation can take place because of the hydroxyl group right here. Why am I saying hydroxide? It's hydroxyl. Sorry, my bad. Okay, what am I saying? Now, aqueous lactic acid is neutralized by aqueous sodium hydroxide. Okay, so acid is neutralized by a base. And write the ionic equation for this neutralization. So always we realize that acid or base, जब भी react करेंगे, the ionic reaction is going to be the formation of water. So H plus, OH minus, and that gives you H2. If you guys are confused कि कैसे बना, see, realize one thing. If I'm reacting like, let's say, HCl with NaOH, what is going to be formed? HCl with NaOH, अगर मैं react करूँ, so NaCl बनेगा और पानी बनेगा. And if I want to write the ionic equation is that equation which does not contain the spectator ions. So H plus or Cl minus, so let's, spectator ions are actually those ions which remain the same before and after the reaction, or which don't take part in the reaction. So either आप अगर HCl को ionize करें, so H plus Cl minus है, Na plus है, OH minus है, right here. And on the right hand side you have Na plus and Cl minus, because all of these are aqueous. So in aqueous you realize that they all will have the ions, but H2O is a liquid, so it won't have any ions. It's just going to be H2O liquid. Now realize what is happening. The Cl minus is the same on the right hand side and on the left hand side. The Na plus is the same on the right and on the left. The only thing that's different is the H plus is actually reacting with the OH minus to give you H2O. So realize that whenever you have an acid base reaction, the ionic equation is always going to be H plus with OH minus giving you H2O. H2. If you don't believe me, go write down all your acid base reactions, और जब आप उसमें ionic equation लिखेंगे, when you cancel out all the spectator ions, end में H plus OH minus और H2O ही रहेगा. So for any acid base reaction, you will always have H plus OH minus giving you guys H2O. So even if you want to add the symbols, that's aqueous because they're ions and that's liquid, right? Now aqueous lactic acid reacts with magnesium. Now yeah. Sorry. Yeah. Because you realize what is potassium manganate? Potassium manganate is no. Listen to me, Abhi. No. Listen to me. Potassium manganate क्या चीज़ है? Potassium manganate is what? An oxidizing agent, Abira. Now, what does an oxidizing agent do? It reduces itself to oxidize others. So lactic acid is being oxidized. That's why the reaction is oxidation. Getting it, Abira? See, potassium permanganate is actually an oxidizing agent. And if you remember your oxidation reduction, we studied that oxidizing agent kya hota? Agent is actually the person which is doing something, right? So oxidizing agent is that agent or that person which is oxidizing something else. And how will it oxidize something else? By getting reduced itself. So potassium permanganate is an oxidizing agent, which means it will reduce itself to oxidize lactic acid. That's why we're saying it's on oxidizing. So oxidation is the reaction taking place and lactic acid is being oxidized. And why? Because you realize that you have lactic acid mein alcohol ka OH bit hai, and you realize that alcohols were being oxidized with either potassium permanganate or potassium dichromate. Remember, Abira? Getting it now? Yes. Yeah. Yes, see, salt or water तो बन रहे हैं and NaOH और HCl है, but I'm talking about the ionic equations. Ionic equation में you eliminate the spectator ions, Qasim. And what are the spectator ions? कि left or right hand side पे जो ions same to same रहेंगे, you cut that off because they don't take part in the reaction. So spectator ions are those ions which don't take part in the reaction. And you realize कि see, Cl minus left will be Cl minus the right will be that the Na plus left, and the only thing that is changing is the H plus is reacting with the OH minus to give you H2. That's why I taught you guys the balancing because of this, because the only change that is taking place is the H plus ions is reacting with the OH minus ions to give you H2. That's the only change that's taking place. That's why we're saying it's neutralization reaction, because pani ban raha hota hai, right? So the overall reaction that is taking place is that is being formed. Okay. Now, aqueous lactic acid reacts with magnesium. Now, it's a lactic acid. Lactic ko beshak ignore kar dein, it's acid plus magnesium, right? So whenever an acid and a metal reacts, you'll get salt and hydrogen gas. Now, what is the question that's asking? Name the gas that is made in the reaction. Hydrogen gas. Because acid plus metal is going to give you guys, acid plus any metal is going to give you salt and hydrogen. Moving on to question number 4. It says, what is the question? It says, zinc bromide and zinc carbonate are both ionic compounds. Predict 2 physical properties other than the electrical conductivity of zinc bromide. Now, zinc bromide, ZnBr2, you realize, what is zinc bromide? It's an ionic compound. Metal and non-metal ki beans mein, there's been a transfer of electrons. Now, what were the physical properties of ionic compound? They conduct electricity in solids, in molten and aqueous state, but not in solid state. But they're thinking, don't talk about electricity. So what are the other physical properties? They have high melting and boiling point. We studied that. So they have high melting point and high boiling point, right? This is 1 point. Boiling and melting point is 1 point. Okay, so they've, and what was the other thing that I taught you guys? Remember guys, एक electrical conductivity का किया था, एक हमने melting boiling point, और एक हमने solubility का किया था कि they are soluble in water. Or you could have also said कि another physical properties is they are solids at room temperature and pressure. But we studied this one. Solubility हमने पढ़ी थी, ये पढ़ी थी, और electrical conductivity पढ़ी थी, right? Now, yeah, see, you remember? Yeah, but I give you guys a little reason for that कि NaCl अगर आपके पास salt है, so the reason why it's soluble in water is because once it comes to water, फिर AS में आप original reason पढ़ते हो, but for you guys, I just said कि once it enters water, the water will actually break its lattice, and once it breaks its lattice, it becomes ions, and therefore it's soluble, right? But who cares, that's reasoning is not in your course. ये तो मैंने आपको आसान बताया, लेकिन असल में ये reasoning है नहीं. क्यों पानी break करते हैं वो reasoning नहीं है, right? Now zinc reacts with bromine to make zinc bromide, and zinc bromide contains zinc 2 plus and Br minus ions. Now explain in terms of the movement of electrons how zinc bromide is formed from zinc atoms and bromide molecules. Tell me guys, what is the question asking you actually? Come on. कह रहा है, yeah, it's talking about the movement of electrons. So it's actually talking about कि basically ये वही पूछ रहा है कि ionic compound zinc bromide कैसे बनता है. कैसे बनता है ionic compound? Zinc metal है, bromine जो है वो आपके पास non metal. So what's gonna happen? The zinc metal will actually, metal क्या करती है ionic compounds में? The zinc metal will lose the electrons, because they have asked in terms of the movement of electrons. So the zinc metal will lose the electrons, and bromine will what? Gain the electrons. And how many electrons are we talking about? 2. So zinc will lose 2 electrons and bromine will gain, so, and 2 bromine atoms will each gain 1 electron. Let's fix our statement, 1 electron. Because you realize कि क्या होता है, zinc 2 plus का मतलब zinc will lose 2 electrons, but bromine is in group 7, so they can only gain 1 electron, and therefore you need 2 bromides, right? So 2 bromine atoms in each will gain 1 electron. So that's the ionic bonding. They've actually asked ionic bonding in terms of statements कि क्या हो रहा है. Okay, easy stuff. Yeah, but who cares? They're not talking about that. They're just saying कि just movement बता दें और कुछ भी नहीं. They're not saying कि oh, resulting in strong electric high force of attraction that holds the ions together and all that stuff. No, they're not talking about that. Now, aqueous zinc bromide reacts with magnesium as shown. Use the equation to explain that oxidation takes place. So, how's the equation telling you that oxidation is taking place? See, you can actually do it from 2 ways, but the equation से क्या पता चले? Magnesium was actually, its oxidation state was 0. It was neutral. Now, Mg2 plus means what? What does Mg2 plus mean? It has lost how many electrons? So since magnesium has lost 2 electrons, therefore oxidation has taken place. Why? K oxidation is loss of electrons. Moving on. Use the equation to explain that reduction has taken place. Now, how is the equation telling you? Zinc was 2 plus and now it's 0. So, zinc was 2 electrons deficient and now it's neutral, which means that it has gained 2 electrons. So, zinc 2 plus has gained 2 electrons. Therefore, reduction is gain of electrons. Easy peasy marks, getting it right. Zinc carbonate is insoluble in water, and zinc carbonate can be prepared by reacting aqueous zinc bromide with the carbonate ions in a precipitation reaction. Name a suitable aqueous solution that can provide the aqueous ions of carbonate. Now, realize कि carbonate की solubility पूछ रहे कि carbonates are mostly insoluble, but which carbonates will be soluble? Tell me guys, which carbonate are we talking about? Which carbonates are soluble in water? Come on. Solubility, all except for group 1 or ammonium. Bas, group 1 or ammonium mein pada. So I can say ammonium carbonate, or you can say group 1. So let's say asani ke liye, let's say sodium carbonate, right? So sodium carbonate keh denge, because sodium carbonate can be aqueous, right? So it says name, don't write the formula. Name ka matlab hai name kar de. So sodium carbonate, or potassium carbonate, or you could have just said ammonium carbonate, whatever. Now, a sample of zinc carbonate is heated strongly. Name the products of this reaction. So we did this yesterday in metals, if you guys remember. Zinc carbonate, whenever you have a carbonate, you realize zinc carbonate, if you heat it strongly, it's actually being thermally decomposed. So a zinc oxide will be formed and a carbon dioxide will form. So whenever a metal carbonate is thermally decomposed, it'll form its oxide and carbon dioxide. So you say zinc oxide is formed and carbon dioxide. Yeah, any questions up till this point, guys? Am I going too fast, or is it easy now? Easy? Asane? What about you, Abira? Easy stuff? Asane, abhi tak sabke full marks aa rahe hain? Okay, let's do this. Now, it says describe petroleum crude oil provides the raw materials for making ethanol and ammonia. It says describe how petroleum crude oil is separated to make fractions such as naphtha and petrol and gasoline. So we did crude oil. It's actually asking you about the fractional distillation of crude oil. So सबसे पहले हमने क्या किया था कि crude oil is actually vaporized or heated very very strongly before it enters the fraction. So we just did crude oil is heated, then it is pumped into the fractionating column. We did this yesterday, remember? Then it is pumped into the fractionating column where fractional distillation will take place. Literally आपके कोर्स में fractional distillation का सिर्फ नाम लिखने का एक मार्क्स है. So where fractional distillation will take place, or fractional distillation takes place. And what happened in fractional distillation? Okay, the crude oil, different hydrocarbons, so different hydrocarbons are separated into fractions, into different fractions based on what? Based on their boiling points. तो असल में इन सारी बातें लिखने का आपको कम से कम 5 मार्क्स मिल गए, right? Why? Because let me tell you, in your course, crude oil is heated का एक मार्क है, then it's pumped into the fractionating column का एक मार्क है, where fractional distillation का एक मार्क है, different hydrocarbons are separated into different fractions का एक मार्क है, based on their boiling points का एक मार्क है. That's how beautiful it is, right? And you could also have said, so that's why I'm saying, guys, that's the beauty. So this will differentiate between you, between a distinction student and an A-star student. These things, these minor things, okay? Then compounds such as C11, इसका मतलब ये नहीं कि इधर कुछ पूछा नहीं हो तो अपने से लिखना शुरू कर दे. No, because it asked us how it's separated, so that's why I mentioned the entire process. Although 2 marks के, it just required you कि एक बता दे crude oil is heated and fractional distillation is the process that's happening, right? But because it's asking you the entire process, वो अलग बात है कि 2 mark है, but you have to write it completely because it's asking you. If it just asks, what is the process that takes, what is the process called in which crude oil is separated, then only fractional distillation. इसका ये मतलब नहीं कि आप fractional distillation को explain करना चाहें, right? So just look at the question. It says describe, tell the कहानी कि कैसे होता है, right? Good. Now, compounds such as C11H24 in the naphtha fraction are cracked to make hydrogen alkenes and smaller alkanes. Explain how the molecular formula C11H24 shows the compound is an alkane. How will it show that the compound is an alkane? Why? Because it fits, it fits the general formula of an alkane, that is CnH2n plus 2, where it's plus 2, where n is the number of carbons. Good stuff. Construct an equation to show the cracking of C11H24 to make ethene and an alkane only. Now, I told you इसके ऐसे सवाल होंगे. C11H24, you're gonna crack it. And what were the conditions for cracking? High temperature, high pressure, and a catalyst Al2O3. Just write it for now in practice ताकि आप लोगों को याद हो ये conditions, right? And then what are the products we form? It's saying कि एक ethene बनेगा, so C2H4 बना. And then what is the other alkane? You just minus C2H4 from this and you'll get the other product. So C2 2 carbons इस्तेमाल हुए. How many carbons are remaining? 9. So C9 carbons are remaining. And minus 4 hydrogens from 20. 4 hydrogens. So you'll get 20 hydrogens that are remaining. So what is the other alkane? That is nonane with you guys. Now moving on. It says describe how hydrogen is converted into ammonia in the Haber process. Include the conditions used in Haber process. Literally, now let me tell you how you start, right? So how hydrogen is converted to ammonia in Haber process. So hydrogen is reacted with what? With nitrogen at a temperature of 400 to 500, so like 450 degrees Celsius, and a pressure of 200 atmospheres and a catalyst, that is iron, is used. So that's how you just answered the exam question and realize you will get all the marks. So hydrogen is reacted with nitrogen, 1 mark, temperature ka dusra mark, pressure ka तीसरा mark, catalyst का चौथा mark. So beautiful, all marks right here. That's so easy, right? So मैंने तो आपको बड़ी डिटेल में समझा था कि पहले चेंबर में ये होता है, दूसरे चेंबर में ये होता है, तीसरे चेंबर में ये होता है, but this is just simple. See, that's what I told you कि Haber process का simply you'll just have to define this in words कि N2 plus H2 that gives you NH3 and you just write all the conditions right here. And that's it. State one other use for hydrogen. What is hydrogen used in? Come on. What is the hydrogen used in? Think about it. It's used in rocket fuels and all that stuff. But what is let's rocket fuel से थोड़ा हट के चले जाते हैं. Let's write कि rocket fuel में इस्तेमाल होता है. That's good stuff. लेकिन एक और चीज़ में हमने organic chemistry में भी एक पढ़ा था एक use. It's used to convert vegetable oil into margarine. So we can also say कि it can also be used in the manufacture of margarine or like butter. So margarine ज़्यादा सही word है, right? So margarine. But fuel में अगर if you want to just be on the safe side, fuel में इस्तेमाल होता है. Yeah. Now ethene reacts with a compound to make ethanol. Name a compound. Now name the compound. Now ethene reacts with a compound. Which compound does ethene react with? Come on. Come on. पढ़ा था alkene plus क्या होता है कि ethanol बनता है. Come on, you can't be forgetting all of these stuff now. And you had some conditions too. Acidified phosphoric acid, 300 degrees Celsius of temperature. इतना detail में ये तो किया था. 60 atmospheric pressure. What is the compound? Steam, everybody. Come on. State one condition for this reaction. So the condition for this reaction is what? The condition for this reaction is like a catalyst that is acidified H3PO4, right? So acidified phosphoric acid, you could have also said a temperature of 300 degrees Celsius, or you could have said that 60 atmospheric pressure. So either or would do the job. Now, section B, answer 3 questions from this section in the spaces provided, but we're gonna do all, okay? I think there are only 3 questions. No, there are 4 questions. No, there are 3 questions. No, 4 questions. 6, 7, 8, 9. Yeah, 4 questions में से हमने चारों की चारों करने. Now, let's start, everybody. State one environmental problem caused by the presence of sulfur dioxide in the air. What was that? We studied that yesterday. कल ही पढ़ा था. Acid rain. SOx. Now, coal-fired power stations produce sulfur dioxide as a pollutant. The sulfur dioxide produced is prevented from entering the air by a process called flue gas desulfurization. And that was kya? Flue gas desulfurization kya tha? Literally just react sulfur dioxide with a strong base to neutralize it. Name the compound used in, what's it called? Name the compound used in, what's saying? In FGD, fused gas sulfur, that reacts with the sulfur dioxide. So it can be any base. You can either, and we said that normally we use calcium carbonate, calcium hydroxide, calcium oxide. So we're saying that yes, normally बिल्कुल जो basically because calcium carbonate थोड़ा सस्ता भी है, so normally it's like calcium carbonate, right? But you can also use calcium oxide, calcium hydroxide, but mostly it's calcium carbonate. Now, moving on, it says coal-fired power stations also produce oxides of nitrogen such as NO. NO is produced when nitrogen reacts with oxygen. Construct the equation for this. So nitrogen reacts with oxygen and it gives you guys NO. How do you balance this? दो N इधर है, दो O's इधर है, इधर एक N एक O है. Just multiply this with a 2 and that's the balanced equation, right? And you just write the gas, that's a gas, and that's a gas. Now, construct the dot and cross diagram to show the bonding in molecule of nitrogen. So nitrogen is in group 5. No. Why? Because it's stating right here. लिखा हुआ है, right? NO लिखा हुआ है. Now, it says कि draw the dot and cross diagram for nitrogen. Now, nitrogen is in group 5, and if it's in group 5, it's going to need 3 electrons to be stable. Therefore, it'll make 3 bonds. So, N और N के बीच में 3 bonds बनते हैं, and it does not want the condensed form. It wants the displayed dot and cross. So, you draw the dot and cross. So, N, each bond represents a pair of electrons. So, एक pair, दो pair, 3 pair, and then you complete all the others on. So इस नाइट्रोजन ने 3 शेयर किए हैं, बाकी कितने रह गए? ग्रुप 5 में था, so बाकी इसके पास 2 3 रह गए, और इसके पास 2 3, and if you count it out, 1 2 3 4 5 6, sorry 3 नहीं 2 रह गए because 3 शेयर किए हैं, so group 5 में था तो 2 रह गए. My bad. Look, 3 is nitrogen ने 3 शेयर किए हैं, and since it was in group 5 it has total 5 valence electrons, so 3 शेयर किए हैं तो 2 रह गए. Right, so even if you can check it out, 2 3 4 5 6 7 8, so that's complete. 2 3 4 5 6 7 8, but you realize I've made a mistake here. What? Okay, I have to show one with dot and one with cross, so I'm gonna draw the dots here. So left one nitrogen is with a cross and right one nitrogen is with the dots, because it says draw the dot and cross, right? So एक को dot से एक को cross से. Now explain why the rate of reaction between nitrogen and oxygen increases as the temperature increases. So what will happen? Increase in temperature results in an increase in kinetic energy. Particles move faster, and therefore there are more frequent collisions, and therefore if there are more frequent collisions, chances of successful collisions increases, and therefore chances of successful collisions increases, and therefore rate increases. That's it. We've done this like a bazillion times, guys. Now moving on. It says nitrogen dioxide reacts with water to form a mixture of dilute nitric acid and dilute nitrous acid. Okay. And they've given you guys the equation. It says nitrogen dioxide reacts with aqueous sodium hydroxide to form 2 different salts and water. Construct the equation for this reaction. Now listen to me guys very carefully. ये equation आपकी course में नहीं है, but it is given you guys a hint above. कहता है कि नाइट्रोजन डाइऑक्साइड जब पानी में रिएक्ट करता है तो वो नाइट्रिक एसिड बनाता है और नाइट्रस एसिड बनाता है, तो एक HNO3 बनाते हैं, एक HNO2 बनाता है, right? So it's saying कि what will happen, what are the 2 different salts that will be formed if this reacts with aqueous sodium hydroxide. So if nitrogen dioxide reacts with aqueous sodium hydroxide, so जैसे अगर नाइट्रोजन डाइऑक्साइड पानी के साथ रिएक्ट करके ये बनाता है, नाइट्रस और नाइट्रिक बनाता है, so similarly if NO2 is reacting with NaOH, you realize that the salt that will be formed is going to be sodium NO2, NaNO2, and the other one will be NaNO3. See, realize, and the third thing that you'll get is H2O. Why? Because literally इसने ऊपर भी यही कहा है कि NO2 when it reacts with water it will form dilute nitric acid and dilute nitrous acid, और NO3 के ऊपर माइनस का चार्ज होता है और NO2 के ऊपर भी माइनस का चार्ज होता है. क्यों? क्योंकि देखो इधर H के साथ कुछ भी नहीं है, मतलब क्रॉस मल्टीप्लाई में this was plus this was minus, right? तो कह रहे एक HNO3 देगा, एक HNO2 देगा, right? Now it's saying कि अगर नाइट्रोजन डाइऑक्साइड reacts with aqueous sodium hydroxide, it will make 2 different salts. तो एक सॉल्ट NO2 के साथ बनेगा, एक सॉल्ट NO3 के साथ बनेगा, और obviously the third thing is water, right? So you realize these things, ये छोटी छोटी चीजें होती हैं that you need to realize. And if you want to balance this out, you have 2 NAs on the right hand side, you only have 1 NA on the left hand side, so you can balance this by adding a 2 here, and then you realize how many nitrogens do you have? You have 2 nitrogens on the right hand side, you only have 1 nitrogen on the left, and you balance out the nitrogen, and all the equations have been balanced out by itself, right? So सारे balanced out, okay. So this is this was like a tricky question right here, but although this reaction is not in your course, this is giving you guys the hint above. So always realize कि कोई चीज़ अगर आपने नहीं पढ़ी होगी उसके hints आपको ऊपर दिए होंगे. ये इतना बड़ा पढ़ा क्यों दिया है, ये इसी वजह से दिया कि next part में ऐसे ही reaction आपसे पूछना चाह रहा था. Now it says nitric acid is a strong acid and या so realize कि सी वाटर के साथ वो जैसे रिएक्शन कर रहा है, ये 2 प्रोडक्ट्स बना रहा है, सिमिलरली बेस के साथ भी वो वही रिएक्शन करेगा. इंस्टेड ऑफ मेकिंग एन एसिड इट विल मेक द सॉल्ट्स, एंड इवन इन द क्वेश्चन इट सेज कि इट्स मेकिंग 2 डिफरेंट सॉल्ट्स. सो ऑब्वियसली अगर आपने ये ना पढ़ा हो तो आप सिर्फ कहते हैं कि सोडियम नाइट्रेट बन जाता, राइट? सोडियम नाइट्रेट, बट इट्स टेलिंग यू कि ये HNO2 बना रहा है, HNO3 बना है, सो ऑब्वियसली द सॉल्ट फॉर्म्ड विल वन बी सोडियम नाइट्रेट and one will be sodium nitrite. Okay, so it's telling you right here 2 different salts are formed, और उसका hint किधर दिया है? Right here. So realize कि if the acid that is being formed, if you have 2 different acids और उनका anion is NO2 और NO3, so salts के भी anions NO2 और NO3 होने चाहिए. Got it, Abira? So this was one tricky question that one of my students got this wrong. He's like, sir, pura paper mera sahi hai except for this equation. So I was like, okay. And I had to solve this for him too. Now, nitric acid is a strong acid and nitrous acid is a weak acid. Describe the difference between a weak acid and a strong acid. So strong acid fully ionizes in water. Fully ionizes when dissolved in water, or fully ionizes in water. And weak acid, it partially ionizes when dissolved in water, or you can say in water. नहीं, क्यों? It fully ionizes in water का मतलब ही ये है कि आप उसको पानी में डाल लें. ओके, कहाँ से? That's a correct statement. No, that's a correct statement. But completely ionizes when you dissolve it in water or in water, Qasim. That's why the teacher didn't do it. So the teacher was a good teacher. इसलिए उसने आपके इसका मार्क काटा, वरना मार्किंग स्कीम कहते हैं सिर्फ completely ionizes भी लिखा हो मार्क दे दे. आपका मार्किंग स्कीम कहते हैं completely ionizes भी लिखा हो मार्क दे दे, लेकिन नहीं. The teacher is a good teacher. That's why I said कि in water. किधर ionizes? When dissolved in water or in water. Okay? So that's why I added in water. Moving on. Question 7. Sulfamic acid is a white crystalline solid. It reacts with aqueous sodium nitrite to make nitrogen gas, all of that stuff. Okay. Yeah. So that's its mole base. Let's do this. Now, it says an excess of sulfamic acid was reacts with 20 centimeter cube of a sample of this much NaNO2, so sodium nitrite. And it says calculate the maximum volume of nitrogen formed measured at room temperature and pressure. So आपको NaNO2 की वो दी है चीज़ें. The data is given for NaNO2 and you'll use NaNO2 to calculate. So NaNO2 को आप moles इधर से find करेंगे, then you'll use that and the equation to find N2. Let's do that. So let's write our known data, that is 20 centimeter cube of NaNO2, and then you realize कि you don't need centimeter cube of NaNO2, you need to go till moles, and you realize कि इसका relationship decimeter cube और moles का. So let's first go to decimeter cube. So 1 decimeter cube में you guys have 1000 centimeter cube of NaNO2, and then you realize कि 1 decimeter cube of NaNO2 has 0.150 moles of NaNO2. How do I know this? Right here. 1 decimeter cube of NaNO2 has these many moles. And now you don't need moles of NaNO2, you need moles of nitrogen. So moles of NaNO2 आपको नहीं चाहिए, you need moles of nitrogen, and that you can get from the equation कि 1 mole of NaNO2 will give you 1 mole of nitrogen. So 1 mole and 1 mole of nitrogen देगा. And then you know you don't need moles of nitrogen, so that goes in the denominator, and you need what? Volume of nitrogen. So decimeter cube चाहिए. You know कि 1 mole of nitrogen has 24 decimeter cube, obviously. So just multiply, divide now. 24 multiplied by 0.15 multiplied by 20 over 1000. So that's gonna give you guys 0.072 decimeter cube, everybody. Okay, good stuff. Moving on, the rate of this reaction can be determined by measuring the volume of nitrogen formed every second. Now, how do you measure? Nitrogen is a gas, and remember I told you कि ATP में और कभी कभार theory में भी volume का सवाल कभी कभार rate का आ जाता है. How do you measure volume? How do you do that? So rate के लिए क्या? It's saying कि draw a label diagram of an assembled apparatus that can be used to make and collect and measure a volume of nitrogen formed in this reaction. So what was that? How would you collect nitrogen and measure? So rate के लिए सबसे पहले rate of reaction चाहिए. Yeah, so rate के लिए सबसे पहले you need a stopwatch. You need this beautiful conical flask right here, and in this conical flask it should be airtight, and it should have a tube right here, and which the connecting tube which should be attached to the gas syringe, right? And you will measure the volume. So that's, and now you label it. So that's the gas syringe. इसको connecting tube कहते हैं, इसको conical flask कहते हैं, and इसको cork कहते हैं. एयर टाइट और कॉर्क, राइट? सो या, एंड देन बीच अंदर क्या होना चाहिए? अंदर वो मेन लेबल तो ये है, अंदर जो होना चाहिए, अंदर क्या होना चाहिए? अंदर ये रिएक्शन हो रहा है. विच रिएक्शन? राइट हियर, NH2SO3H एंड NaNO2 का रिएक्शन होगा, तभी तो नाइट्रोजन बनेगा, राइट? सो यू से कि इधर रिएक्शन में क्या है, you have NH2SO3H and then you also have like this is like this solution right here, and then you also have your beautiful NaNO2. Now you realize कि उसमें आप अगर equation में देखिए NH2SO3H is a solid, so without like drawing these scrambled thingies I can just make like this thing right here and I can label this as NH2SO3H. Why? Because it's a solid, so solid चीज़ blocks में होती है, breaks में होती है, right? And NaNO2 it's aqueous, so मैंने उसको वो solution से represent किया. So that's all it is and you'll get 2 marks for this easy stuff. Yeah. Connecting tube. That's known as the connecting tube. Yeah, just give me a second. Let me message PS साहब की class इनकी 8:20 ही है. Yeah. Okay. Moving on. It says the concentration of NaNO2 is increased. Okay. The temperature of the reaction remains constant. Explain and explain how the rate of reaction changes. Now, if you increase the concentration, what will happen? Increase in concentration increases the rate of the reaction. Why? ये तो हमने पढ़ा था, लेकिन reason क्या था इसकी? Because why? Because there are more particles. Concentration क्या होते हैं? Mole over volume. More particles per unit volume. Therefore क्या होगा? Therefore more frequent collisions, and therefore if there are more frequent collisions, what will happen is chances of successful collisions, and thus chances of successful collisions increases. And rate increases, ऊपर लिखा हुआ है, right? Sulfamic acid forms as salts called sulfamates, and that contains the anion NH2SO3 minus. Magnesium carbonate is added to the sample of NH2SO3H, right? Okay. And it says that magnesium sulfamate, water, and a gas is formed that turns lime water milky. So which gas turns lime water milky? Carbon dioxide, right? And it says construct the equation from. So from this thing you'll be like, oh, ये तो मेरे से होना ही नहीं ये equation. But it's pretty simple because he's given you all the information. You just have to put it into symbols. What? Magnesium carbonate is added to this. तो पहले सबसे पहले तो ये लिख ले. Magnesium carbonate is added to NH2 SO3 and H. Then what will that give you? वो भी दिया है. Magnesium sulfamate, water, and a gas is formed. So water और गैस बना, which is carbon dioxide. मुफ्त के मार्क्स है. अब मैग्नीशियम सल्फामेट कैसे बनाना है? नाउ यू नो कि मैग्नीशियम के ऊपर 2+ चार्ज है, लेकिन सल्फामेट कैसे बनेगा? सल्फामेट का एनाइन इधर दिया हुआ है. NH2 SO3 minus cross multiply, you'll get Mg NH2 SO3 whole twice. That's it. 3 मार्क्स मुफ्त के. सिर्फ बच्चे सल्फामेट और ये देख के डर गए तो क्वेश्चन ही छोड़ दिया. That's it. And now you balance it off if it needs balancing, and yes, it does need balancing. Why? Because here you realize कि check it out. Does it need balancing or no? Check it out. Does it? Yeah. Because here you have sulfamate is twice, और इधर ये सिर्फ एक दफ़ा है. ये देखिए ये पूरा पार्ट एक दफ़ा है और इधर it's being multiplied with 2. So just add a 2 here. सबसे पहले वो चीज़ बैलेंस करें जो बिल्कुल सामने सामने. And the other things are balanced because magnesium एक है, magnesium एक है. अब ये पूरा आपके पास 2 हैं और ये पूरा आपके पास इधर 2 है. So that's no need for balancing that, right? And then you realize कि you have 2 hydrogens right here and 2 times 1, that's 2 hydrogens here, and CO3 here, and you have a CO, and that's 3. So CO3. So 1 carbon here, 1 carbon here, and then 3 oxygens with this thing. 2 plus 1, 3, and that's 3. और ये तो हमने as 1 consider करके इधर कर दिया, right? So that's it. That's literally it. Moving on. Oh, I'm so tired, man. Now, moving on, it says lead is a metal with a proton number of 82. Use the periodic table to state the number of occupied electron shells in the atoms of lead. So it's actually saying कि periodic table इस्तेमाल करें to tell me कि how many state the number of occupied electron shells. कितने shells हैं? So shell number कैसे पता चलेगा? शेल नंबर कैसे पता चलेगा, किस चीज़ से, पीरियड से. And so yeah, so lead is in which period? Lead is, I think, where is lead? If I look at it, lead is right here. So in which period is this? This is period 1, period 2, period 3, period 4, period 5, period 6. So this is in period 6, therefore 6 shells. और जिन लोगों को अब नहीं आता वो अब इलेक्ट्रॉन शेल्स बनाएंगे 2 8 8 8 8 8 8 8 8 बना के और फिर वो करेंगे. So that's so stupid. So it has 6 shells. 6 electron shells, right? Use the periodic table to state the number of electrons in the outer shell of an atom of lead. So outer में कितने होंगे, in which group it is. Yeah, so कौन से group में है lead? Right here it's in group 4, therefore it should have 4 electrons in its outermost shell. So we say lead has 4 electrons. Then describe with the aid of a label diagram the metallic bonding in lead. So how do you draw the metallic bonding, everybody? Easy, just make a regular lattice. So let's make that regular lattice. Let's make it right here. Let's make that regular lattice and just draw the delocalized electrons. And you will tell the examiner that E is equal to electrons. And which electrons? Delocalized. भी bracket में लिख ले to just stand out. And you realize कि lead आपके पास, and ये क्या चीज़ है? This is your positive ions. So a lattice of positive ions. So you'll also label it for the examiner. So I've drawn all of this stuff. Now I'm gonna say, okay, let me just what's it called? Let me just explain it, right? So it says describe. So what is the description? It is a no, just made as circles, right? Just made circles, that's it. And just labeled it as a positive ions. These are your positive ions, right? It's your choice. Your choice, absolutely. You can write. लेकिन अगर इधर PB लिखोगे इसका मतलब ये कि एक एटम है, वरना फिर चार्ज लिख लो. Okay, just add the charge कि क्या चार्ज होगा PB पे. Okay. Got it. Now moving on, it says how do we describe it? तो metals की metallic bonding की क्या description है? It is a lattice of positive ions and a sea of delocalized electrons held together to the positive ions by strong electrostatic forces of attraction. Yeah, and held closely together basically. Good stuff. Now it says give 2 physical properties of lead that are characteristic of all metals. So characteristics of all metals: metals are shiny, metals are good conductors of electricity, in any state. Yeah, they are shiny. सारे metals shiny होते हैं, right? Or you could also say कि they have high melting and boiling point. But high melting and boiling point लिखने से थोड़ा सा गुरेज करें. Why? Because the problem is कि group 1 metals they don't have very high melting points, right? लेकिन इधर लिखे कि सारे metals पे वो apply, तो थोड़ा सा गुरेज करें. It wouldn't be wrong, but just be little. So you can also write malleable, ductile, shiny, good thermal conductors. So whatever you want, right? So let's just write they are malleable, because all metals are malleable and like ductile. So ductile or malleability separate points. So इसके अलग-अलग mark लिखने वाले हैं. Okay. You could also have written shiny. You could have also written that all metals are good thermal. They are good thermal conductors. So they conduct heat. Good conductors of heat too. Okay. Lead 2 ethanoate is a white crystalline soluble salt. Name a suitable combination of an acid and an insoluble salt which is used to create, is used to prepare what? Used to prepare your lead ethanoate. Yeah, so it's saying कि lead ethanoate is a white crystalline soluble. So soluble salt की preparation कैसे करते थे? Come on, tell me. It's yeah, so what is saying कि name a suitable combination of an acid and an insoluble base. So tell him an insoluble yeah. So what is an insoluble base, everybody? Tell me an insoluble. Yeah, lead hydroxide is an insoluble base. Absolutely, right? So let's write lead hydroxide. PbOH and then twice lead 2 hydroxide है, right? So L lead के ऊपर 2 plus का charge है, OH के ऊपर minus का charge है, cross multiply, you'll get PbOH twice. So name a suitable combination of an acid and an insoluble. So आपको lead, since lead is the positive ion, आपको इसके साथ negative चाहिए, और negative will be your hydroxide, right? And ethanoate is actually the anion. So ethanoate क्या होता है? That's your anion. तो ethanoate के साथ आपको positive ion चाहिए, right? Oh sorry, that's the base. That's the base. So ethanoate के साथ आपको positive ion चाहिए, और since it's an acid, so आपको ethanoate के साथ H plus चाहिए. So ethanoate के साथ जब H plus आता है, so basically it's ethanoic acid, right? You need an acid. Ethanoate was the salt, so इसका acid bit क्या है? Ethanoic acid. Okay, so lead ethanoate form करने के लिए lead oxide, and since can name the insoluble base, so lead oxide or lead hydroxide must have reacted with the ethanoic acid to give you lead ethanoate. Okay, yeah. Aqueous lead ethanoate, it reacts with aqueous sodium iodide. So yeah, and it says a yellow precipitate of lead iodide is formed. Construct an ionic equation with state symbol. Now if it's a precipitate of lead iodide, you realize the ionic equation क्या होगी इसकी? Pb2 plus I minus, that is going to give you PbI2, और 2I minus चाहिए 2 plus के लिए. That's it. याद है आपको हमने जब प्रेसिपिटेट मेथड में एक इनसॉल्युबल सॉल्ट बनाया था, एक प्रेसिपिटेट बना था, तो उसका क्या था आयोनिक इक्वेशन? द सेम एज द चेंज, राइट? सो lead 2 plus 2I minus gives you lead iodide. Explain why solid lead iodide cannot be electrolyzed. Now why can't solid lead iodide be electrolyzed? Beautiful, easy stuff. क्योंकि electrolyte क्या चाहिए? Solid lead iodide is not an electrolyte. Why? Because it cannot conduct electricity. Why? So solid lead iodide is not an electrolyte. Why? Because it cannot conduct electricity. And why can't it conduct electricity? But it's a solid, right? No, ionic compounds can conduct electricity, but in molten and aqueous state. It's in a solid state, right? So why can't it conduct electricity? Solid lead iodide can't conduct electricity. Why? Due to no free moving ions. No free moving ions, right? Moving on, last question. Oh, finally. कितना बड़ा सवाल है कि ये छोटा है. Oh my god. The structure of ethyl propanoate is shown. Oh my god, I'm so tired. Wait, let me just stretch a little bit. Let me just take a sip from my coffee. Okay. The structure of ethyl propanoate is shown. Circle the atoms in the structure that show the ethyl propanoate is an ester. So what is actually showing you that ethyl propanoate is ester? The ester linkage, right? Yeah, the ester linkage. You can also measure it. This is an ester because this is an ester linkage. Yeah. Now it says aqueous bromine is shaken with the sample of ethyl propanoate, right? So this is ethyl propanoate right here, ethyl propanoate. Now aqueous bromine is shaken. Explain in terms of structure of ethyl propanoate why the aqueous bromine turns colorless. क्या चीज़ है ethyl propanoate में which is actually turning the aqueous bromine colorless? Think about it. Aqueous bromine क्यों colorless हो रहा है? Remember? The carbon-carbon double bond, because it's unsaturated, the carbon-carbon double bond. That's it. You can actually write it carbon-carbon. I remember alkenes would decolorize bromine aqueous. Why? Because the carbon-carbon double bond. So इधर एक Br लग जाना था और इधर एक Br लग जाना था. So carbon-carbon double bond. Yeah. Moving on, it says ethyl propanoate is prepared by a reversible reaction between a carboxylic acid and an alcohol. As shown, a mixture of carboxylic acid and the alcohol is allowed to reach equilibrium. It says name the alcohol used in the reaction. Now, what is the alcohol used in this reaction? Think about it. Meth, eth, so ethanol. वैसे आपके तो ओके मुश्किल सवाल है. The reaction uses an acid catalyst. State the effect of this catalyst on the position of equilibrium. क्या effect है catalyst का equilibrium position पे everybody? No effect, because catalysts, they only affect the rate of the reaction. It does not affect the equilibrium position. Now, the concentration of alcohol is increased. Describe and explain what happened to the position of the equilibrium. Now, look at this. The concentration of this alcohol right here is increased. Now, if the concentration of the alcohol is increased, the system will want to decrease the concentration of the alcohol. And how will it want to? So let's just make this into a big block. अब ये बहुत ज़्यादा, अब system इसको कम करना चाहेगा. So what will do? The system will want to decrease the alcohol, therefore making more products ताकि ये जल्दी जल्दी ख़त्म हो जाए. So therefore the equilibrium will shift to the right, everybody. So what will happen is if you increase the concentration, describe and explain. So increasing in the concentration of alcohol will actually, the system will want to decrease the concentration of alcohol. Therefore, the equilibrium shifts to the right and more products are made. Or you can say okay, and like the equilibrium shifts to the right and the concentration of alcohol decreases, or the extra alcohol is gonna be used up, right? Because it's talking in terms of alcohol, why tell them in terms of products, right? Yeah, so if the concentration of alcohol was decreased, now आपने इसको ज़बरदस्ती decrease कर दिया. Now the system will want to increase the concentration of alcohol, and because it's a reversible reaction, so the equilibrium will shift to the left, therefore increasing the concentration of the alcohol. Okay, yeah. That's it. In an experiment, 10.8 gram of carboxylic acid is reacted with an excess alcohol. The experimental yield of ethyl propanoate is going to be 9.45 grams. And it says show that the maximum possible yield of what's it called? Show that the is 15 grams. तो कह रहे हैं कि in an experiment 10.8 grams of carboxylic acid is reacted with excess alcohol. ठीक है जी. The experimental yield of ethyl propanoate is 9. तो मतलब कह रहे इंडस्ट्री में क्या हो रहा है, किस चीज़ का सवाल है, परसेंटेज यील्ड का. इंडस्ट्री में क्या हो रहा है कि 10.8 ग्राम से 9.45 ग्राम्स बन रहा है, राइट. एंड इट सेज कि 100% यील्ड बताएं कि 15 ग्राम से. उसने पहले से आपको आंसर दिया कि 100% 15 ग्राम से, ये हमें दिखा दे. तो हमें पता है हमने तो 100% वैसे भी कैलकुलेट करना था कि 10.8 से इंडस्ट्री में तो 9.45 बन रही है, लेकिन एक्चुअली थ्योरेटिकली कितना बन रही है. इक्वेशन अगर मैं इस्तेमाल करूं 100% यील्ड अगर मेरे पास आए तो कितना बनेगी. सो लेट्स डू दैट. 10.8 grams of carboxylic acid. Now which carboxylic acid do you guys have right here? Here they've given you the formula mass, that's 72. So 10.8 grams of the carboxylic acid, you know you don't need grams of carboxylic acid, they need to be cancelled out, you need moles, and you've been given the molar mass, that is 72 gram per mole. So you know कि 1 mole of carboxylic acid has 72 grams, and then you know कि 1 mole of carboxylic acid will give you 1 mole of ethyl propanoate. How do you know that? Right here इस equation में कोई 2 3 वगैरह नहीं लिखेगा. So 1 mole of the acid will give you guys 1 mole of the ester, right? So 1 mole of the acid gives you 1 mole of the ester, and then you know कि 1 mole of ethyl propanoate में कितने grams होते हैं. So ethyl propanoate के आप molar mass find करें, right? So how many grams are there in ethyl propanoate? Let's calculate that. meth eth and then meth eth prop. So count करें कितने carbons है, 5 carbons है. So 12 times 5 plus कितने हाइड्रोजन है, 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8. So plus 8 plus कितने ऑक्सीजन है, 1 2. So plus 16 times 2. So what do you get? 12 times 5 plus 8 plus 16 times 2, that's going to give you 100. So 100 grams. I think 100 gram per mole is the molar mass. So 1 mole of ethyl propanoate 100 grams है. Calculate करें, इससे 15 grams ही आना है, right? So you've actually shown this to the examiner. Next bit. Calculate the percentage yield of ethyl propanoate in this experiment. So अगर 10.8 grams से असल में अगर 100% yield, so 100% yield अगर 15 grams थे, 15 grams 100% yield है, maximum yield है, 100% दिया भी है. अगर 15 grams 100% yield है, because that's the theory हमने जो find किया है, तो कितना बनना है, 9.45 grams कितने percent yield होगा. x cross multiply, you guys will get 9.45 times 100 over 15. That'll give you 63%. So that's it. We've scored 75 out of 75. आसान था पेपर कि नहीं? आसान था? इसमें 75 स्कोर कर सकते थे आप लोग मेरे बगैर कि नहीं? श्योर? ये डिस्टिंक्शन मिल गई, ये ले। ये ऐसे देखिए इतनी आसान थी केमिस्ट्री, आप लोग पता नहीं क्या समझ रहे हो, केमिस्ट्री क्या बला है, क्या बला नहीं है, मोल क्या बला है, ऑर्गेनिक केमिस्ट्री क्या बला है, गपशप। ये देखिए इतना ही पढ़ाई हमने 4 महीने की और अब इसमें हम वी कैन गेट 75 out of 75 easily. So now what your job is that you're gonna watch this video again. No, you're not gonna actually watch this video, but you're gonna solve this past paper again and you're gonna do it on your own. और जब आप ये solve करेंगे आप फिर marking scheme के साथ check करेंगे अपने answers. So I know that all my answers are obviously correct because I'm the king of chemistry, right? So all my answers are correct, but you guys have to check yours with marking scheme. और अगर गलत हो तो then you guys have to watch my video again for the answers. ठीक है guys? So tomorrow we are going to be doing the या तो मज़े की बात है, ये तो और अच्छी बात है आप लोगों की तो बहुत। मैंने आपको कहा था 50 almost 40%, 35 to 40% is organic chemistry in your paper theory में. So that should be 100% prepared guys. Sometimes organic chemistry का सवाल तो must है. It's not possible कि organic chemistry से कुछ ना आए. ठीक है, so that's going to be a must and you will get all these questions later on. Okay, let me just stop the recording. We can chit chat for a moment.